Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Mick Burton for inviting me here. Although I'm afraid there's been an unpleasant misunderstanding today, because I don't belong to the academic world. I am no professor. Sorry, I think the slides are going too fast. And I'm just passionate about the Burton subject. This morning, as soon as Professor Maver began his presentation, I realized there was something wrong with me, but I didn't have the nerve to raise my hand and leave the room. Instead, I decided to stay because I was fascinated by all the speeches. But now that it's my turn, I must confess that I'm an expert on the wrong Burton. I'm afraid the slides went too fast, but I'm an expert about Richard Burton, the actor, the British actor. At this point, I can go, or I can stay and tell you about his first meeting with Elizabeth Taylor on the set of Cleopatra. I'm joking. I'm joking because I am like this. And in fact, you must admit that 90% of the people associates the name Richard Burton to the thirsty Welsh actor who married Liz Taylor twice. My name is Luigi Lavisa. I come from Padova, and I'm here because I have an enormous passion for London. And at the beginning of this year, I started a blog, which is called The Londoner, in which I tell about the places I visit during my frequent joyrides in the British capital. These raids usually last a couple of days, from Friday evening until Sunday, often without sleeping, apart from a few hours on the seats of Stansted Airport. An average of 15-20 stops across London by foot, taking the underground or getting on a bus with my camera and a notebook. Before leaving Italy, I planned my destinations, all of them found in the weird books I've been collecting for years. And when I'm on site, I usually get good vibes. I write down my impressions on the place, I take some photographs, and then when I'm back in Italy, even weeks apart, I go deep and research to finally write the post for the Londoner. I understand that my passion can sound bizarre, but as I always say, blogging is a much cheaper method compared to the fees of a psychoanalyst. In 1897, Georgiana Stisted wrote The True Life of Captain Sir Richard Burton, in which, among other things, she disowned Isabel's claim about Sir Richard's conversion to Catholicism on his deathbed. One of the funniest passages in the book is the following prophecy. Quote, 50 years hence, London's ever-advancing tide will have swept away every vestige of the shabby sectarian cemetery where Richard Burton lies. End of quote. Well, 120 years later, we can conclude she was absolutely wrong. Today, in fact, I'm going to tell you about my visit to the place where Captain Richard Francis Burton lives since 1891. I'm also going to list the countless coincidences that happened to me since that afternoon in October the 16th, 2016. Here's the first coincidence, for example. The visit took place exactly 1 year ago. Believe me, I can prove it with the Ryanair boarding card. I left on the 14th, it was Friday, and I visited Mortlake Cemetery on the Sunday, so it was the 16th. Exactly 1 year ago. First coincidence. I came across Captain Burton and his tomb a few weeks before leaving, flicking through a book written by Peter Ashley. It's called London Peculiars, Curiosities in a Capital City, published by English Heritage in 2004. In his foreword, Ian Sinclair, a famous writer, he writes about London basically, provides a definition of the spirit of the book. The same spirit I try to express in my blog. Quote, this other London, writes Sinclair, the city of memory, is available to the walker, the rag picker, the information obsessive. Ashley, the author, follows up a clue found in a junk shop window, a couple of lines in an out-of-print guide, a hint by some elective predecessors such as Geoffrey Fletcher. The point of these peculiars, images and brief histories is to get us moving, to keep us alert. The book showed 3 photographs and gave a brief mention to Burton's life. Then it quickly described the mausoleum. My attention was immediately caught by this big tent landing like a UFO in the middle of the graves of a typical English countryside cemetery. These 3 photographs were more than enough to make me include Mortlake among the stops of my following raid in London. And so here I am. It's lunchtime, Sunday, October the 16th, 2016, and I sit in a Southwestern Railway train leaving Waterloo Station. I just got off another train coming from London Bridge after a visit to the former Billingsgate Fish Market. Speaking of trains and coincidences, it's significant the fact that in Italian language we call coincidenza when you get off a train to catch another one, whereas the English use connection. That's because in Italy, if the first train is on time and you manage to catch the second one, it is a sheer coincidence. The word connection, on the contrary, ensures that there will be no problem because you are in England and you will reach your destination on time. Connection is a proper word. Half an hour later, in fact, I am in Mortlake. Once I get out of the station, I see a small building, today the site of a vintage cars retailer, built as Queen Victoria's waiting room. Now and then she used to come to her White Lodge residence in Richmond Park. Immediately I realized something else. Mortlake is very close to Heathrow, the biggest airport in London, and I noticed that every 40 seconds a noisy plane passes over my head, ready for landing. Very noisy planes. I quickly walk along North Warper Way, and in a few minutes I reach the entrance of St. Mary Magdalene Catholic Church. Here it is. This cemetery was chosen by Isabel Burton because it housed the remains of some members of her family. At that time, Mortlake was a small village, and only afterwards it was swallowed by the Greater London. Burton, who died in Trieste in October 1890, received his English funeral only on June the 15th, 1891. A few days before his death, talking to his wife, he had expressed the will to rest in peace beside her inside a tent. His wishes were honored, and Isabel commissioned the job to a stonemason from Highgate, a certain Mr. Dyke, and the overall cost was £460. The tomb recreates the tent used by the Burtons in the days when they lived in Syria. Therefore, it's not in the shape of an Arab or Bedouin tent, as you read in some books. Watching from afar, you get the impression that a sudden gust of wind can lift those walls made of heavy cloth. The walls are in fact made of sandstone, actually. The floor inside the tomb is made from Carrara marble with black inserts. The mausoleum puts near each other Catholic symbols, the crucified Christ above the entrance, the Bethlehem star on the top, and Islamic elements, star and crescent, the Arab lamps inside hanging from the ceiling. The entrance door was sealed in 1971 after an act of vandalism the year before. On the front wall we see 3 marble plaques. The first one shows the dates of birth and death of the Burtons. The second one, the one in the middle, in the shape of a ribbon, reminds of the people who supported the building of the tomb. The third plaque is bigger, since it contains a sonnet by Justin Huntley McCarthy, Irish man of letters and politician. Farewell, dear friend, dead hero. McCarthy recalls the perils in Burton's life, the big joys, his love for adventure. And here we find the third coincidence, the reference to Croatia, where we are today. The poet mentions Burton's place of death as the place where the Austrian Eagles poise on eastern hills. In 1890, Trieste was in fact part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, By the way, today's Austrian flag shows a single eagle, whereas the coat of arms of Austria-Hungary had a double-headed eagle. That's why McCarthy says Austrian Eagles in the plural. Burton's tomb conceals one last marvel if you have a look behind the tent, beside the boundary wall. You find an iron ladder built during the 1974 restoration. Captain Burton didn't like the darkness, and so on Isabel's indication, a small window was created on the ceiling to let some light in. Initially it was stained glass and represented Burton's coat of arms, but it was crushed in 1962, and replaced 10 years later with reinforced plate glass. The same glass that now is in front of me, now that I've climbed the stairs. Sir Richard Burton and Lady Isabel are down there. They've been resting together for over a century in a room full of bizarre objects lying on the floor and hanging on the walls. A mirror on the far wall, where once was the entrance, now sealed, shows a small altar which otherwise I wouldn't see, and this mirror gives me the impression that there's another room between the coffins. Isabel's casket on the left is very basic, made of mahogany. Richard's coffin is more elaborate, with gilded handles and decorated by a big cross. Arab lamps, colored glass flasks, and 4 strings of camel bells hanging from the ceiling. Each string goes to a small electrical shaker that is wired to a large battery at the head of Isabel's coffin. A switch atop the door, still in place, would close the circuit and make the camel bells tinkle when the door was opened. Everything is covered in dust, lots of dust. I climb down the ladder and I head towards the exit of the graveyard. When I'm halfway down the alley, I turn around and pay my regards to Captain Burton and his wife. Then I close the creaky gate of Mortlake Cemetery. A few months later, August, I am in England with my girlfriend, a trip between Devon and Cornwall. On the evening of August 22, we are having dinner in a pub in St. Just, and I check the emails while enjoying a well-deserved pint of Dunbar. Scrolling through the messages, I dwell on one of these, whose object is an old friend, Sir Richard Francis Burton. The sender is a certain McWalton. He says he read my report from Mortlake and he would like me to talk about it at a conference he's arranging in Croatia in October. And incidentally, here is another coincidence, the one that brought Mick Walton on the London Herb. Back to March this year, I post my article about Sir Richard's tomb, and I found out that a certain Riccardo from Trieste in 2010 made a documentary about Burton. But the movie seems nowhere to be found. Then I remember film critic Beatrice, who writes for Il Piccolo in Trieste. I met her a few years ago. She led me and other people in a wonderful walk to visit movie locations in Trieste during the film festival. She might know something more about the documentary. She answers in real time, writes an email to Riccardo, he contacts me, and a few days later I receive a copy of the documentary. Wonderful. Thank you again. Riccardo will then inform Mick about my post. Let's go back to Cornwall to tell you about the 4th coincidence. The following morning, I read Mick's invitation again. I Google Sir Richard Francis Burton, and from Mountain View, California, Google suggests that a few miles away from the B&B where I'm staying, there is the world's only museum about Sir Richard Burton in the world. I cannot do other than visit the museum. Within an hour, I ring Shanti Baba's bell, and you just listen to him, so what else can I say? I visited the museum and it is wonderful. And finally, are you ready for the last coincidence? 2 weeks ago, I get an email from Mick. He asks, here's a picture of me together with Shanti. 2 weeks ago, I get an email from Mick. He asks if I can give a lift to Opatia to a couple of people who live in my hometown, Padova. I say that's okay, just give me their email address to arrange things directly. I write to Barbara and Daniel, and I found out something amazing. Padovan's population is just over 200,000 people. But I live in the same street where Barbara and Daniel live. My house is at number 53, their house is at number 61. So, 1001 coincidences. Sir Richard must be behind all this, I know. But don't forget that behind every great man there is a woman, and she burned his priceless papers when he died, of course. But I think she redeemed herself by building such an amazing town. So God bless you, Lady Isabel Burton.
Thank you very much. What can I say? I mean, all right, and.